The notification sound cut through the silence of Mark's apartment like a blade. Your order has been confirmed. Estimated delivery, 23 minutes. Mark Caldwell didn't even look up from his laptop. His eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets for the past 11 hours, and his stomach had been growling for the last 2. He'd skipped lunch again, 3rd time this week, and now at 10:47 on a Tuesday night, all he wanted was something greasy, cheap, and fast enough to let him collapse into bed before midnight. The rain hammered against the window of his 5th-floor apartment in downtown Seattle. Outside, the neon glow from the Thai restaurant across the street flickered erratically, casting unstable shadows across his cramped living room. Mark rubbed his temples and took another sip of cold coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. His phone buzzed again. Driver assigned, Raphael M. Rating, 4.9 stars. Mark barely registered it. He'd used QuickBite dozens of times. The routine was always the same. Order, wait, grab food from some exhausted driver who looked as dead inside as he felt, tip through the app, done. No human interaction required beyond a nod and a mumbled thank you, exactly how he liked it. He returned his attention to the Excel file that his manager had dumped on him at 6:30, right as he was about to leave. Need this reconciled by morning, she'd said, not even looking up from her own screen. Mark had nodded, swallowed his frustration, and settled back into his ergonomic prison for another 4 hours of unpaid overtime. His phone lit up a 3rd time. Mark frowned. The app usually didn't send this many notifications. He picked up the device, expecting to see the standard "your driver is on the way" message. Instead, the screen showed something else entirely. The in-app chat window had opened automatically, something he'd never seen happen before. The interface looked normal enough, the little speech bubble icon, the text field at the bottom, the driver's profile picture in the corner showing a young Latino man with kind eyes and a tired smile. But the message that appeared made Mark's blood run cold. It wasn't text, not exactly. The first line was a string of characters that looked like corrupted code. %EASIS override, ESOX4A7F% signal, hijack sent LOC spoof active %. Mark stared at it, his exhausted brain struggling to process what he was seeing. Was this some kind of glitch? A hack? He'd heard about delivery apps getting compromised, but he'd never experienced it firsthand. Then, below the garbled code, a second message appeared. This one was in plain English. Don't open the door. They are using my gear. Help me. Mark's apartment suddenly felt smaller, colder. His finger hovered over the screen, trembling slightly. He read the message again, then a 3rd time, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Some kind of joke, a prank. Anything but what it appeared to be. They are using my gear. Who was they? And whose gear? Mark's eyes flicked to the driver's profile picture. Raphael M., 4.9 stars. 2,347 completed deliveries. Member since 2021. Everything looked legitimate. Another message appeared. Please, check my location. I'm not where the app says I am. Mark's heart began to hammer against his ribs. His finger moved almost on its own, tapping the small GPS icon in the corner of the chat window. The app's interface shifted, bringing up a map of downtown Seattle. 2 dots appeared on the screen. The first dot, green and pulsing, showed his own location on 7th Avenue, exactly where his apartment building stood. The second dot, red and also pulsing, showed the driver's location, but the red dot wasn't moving toward him. It was stationary, sitting in what appeared to be an industrial area near the waterfront, at least 5 miles away from his apartment. Mark zoomed in on the map, his throat tightening. The location marker sat in the middle of what looked like an abandoned lot, surrounded by warehouses and shipping containers. No restaurants, no traffic, nothing that would explain why a delivery driver would be there. Mark's hand was shaking now. He looked at the estimated delivery time still displayed at the top of the screen, arriving in 8 minutes. That was impossible. No one could travel 5 miles through Seattle's downtown traffic in 8 minutes. Not in this rain. Not at this time of night. His doorbell camera chimed. Mark nearly dropped his phone. The notification appeared on his screen. Motion detected at front door. With trembling fingers, he switched to the camera app. The grainy video feed loaded slowly, buffering for what felt like an eternity. When the image finally resolved, Mark felt his stomach drop. A man stood in the hallway outside his apartment. He was wearing a QuickBite vest, the familiar red and yellow colors that Mark had seen countless times before. In his left hand, he held a thermal delivery bag, the kind designed to keep food hot during transport. His right hand hung casually at his side, but it was his face that made Mark's skin crawl. The man was smiling, not a friendly customer service smile, not the tired, perfunctory expression of someone just trying to finish their shift. This was something else entirely. Something wrong. The man was staring directly into the doorbell camera, his smile wide and unwavering, as if he knew Mark was watching, as if he wanted Mark to see him. Mark's phone buzzed again. He looked down at the chat window, his pulse roaring in his ears. A new message had appeared. They put something in the bag. Don't let them inside. My heart rate is in the app. Check it, please. Heart rate? Mark's mind raced. He'd heard that some delivery apps had started experimenting with biometric monitoring for driver safety, but he'd never actually seen the feature activated. His fingers moved frantically across the screen, searching through the app's menus. There, hidden in the driver profile section, beneath the rating and delivery count, was a small heart icon he'd never noticed before. He tapped it. A real-time graph appeared, showing a heart rate reading 132 beats per minute. But what made Mark's own heart nearly stop was the location data attached to the biometric signal. The heart rate monitor was transmitting from the red dot on the map, from the abandoned lot 5 miles away, not from the hallway outside his apartment. Mark's doorbell rang. 3 sharp, deliberate chimes. He looked back at the camera feed. The man in the quick-bite vest was no longer smiling. His expression had shifted into something neutral, almost bored. He was holding up the thermal bag toward the camera, shaking it slightly as if to say, "I have your food. Open the door." Mark's phone displayed another notification. "Your order has arrived. Please collect your delivery." But in the chat window, Raphael's, the real Raphael's, messages continued to appear in rapid succession. "They're wearing my vest. They have my phone. I don't know what they want. Please don't open the door. Please help me. Please." Mark stood frozen in the middle of his apartment, his burger order turning into a nightmare he couldn't understand. Outside his door, the stranger waited patiently, the thermal bag in his hand. On his phone screen, the heart rate monitor showed 134 beats per minute, rising. And somewhere 5 miles away, in an abandoned lot by the waterfront, the real Raphael was alive, for now. Mark had 30 seconds to decide. The man outside knocked again, harder this time, and Mark realized with crystalline horror that whoever was standing in his hallway knew exactly which apartment to come to, which meant they'd already been inside the building's security system. His hands moved toward the door lock, then stopped. What was he about to do? Mark's hand froze 6 inches from the deadbolt. Every instinct screamed at him to step away from the door, but his body remained locked in place, caught between the primal urge to flee and the paralyzing uncertainty of what was actually happening. His eyes darted between his phone screen and the peephole, trying to reconcile 2 impossible realities. The knocking came again, methodical, patient. 3 evenly spaced raps that somehow felt more threatening than if the stranger had been pounding frantically. Mark forced himself to breathe. His background in data analysis, the same mind-numbing skill that had kept him chained to spreadsheets for 11 hours, suddenly kicked into gear. He needed information, facts, something concrete to base a decision on. He pulled up the chat window again and typed with shaking fingers. "Who are you? What's happening?" The response came immediately, as if Raphael had been waiting with his thumbs hovering over the keyboard. "My name is Rafael Morales. I'm 26. I've been driving for QuickBite for 3 years. Tonight I picked up your order from Burger Stop on Pine Street at 10:38. As I was getting back in my car, someone hit me from behind. I woke up zip-tied in the back of a van. We drove for maybe 15 minutes. Now I'm in some kind of warehouse. They took my phone, my vest, my thermal bag, everything." Mark's throat constricted. He typed back, "How are you sending these messages?" "They didn't find my smartwatch. It syncs with the delivery app for navigation. I'm using the emergency chat override function. It's supposed to be for accidents. I've been trying to reach QuickBite support for 20 minutes, but the system keeps routing me to automated responses. You're the only real person I can contact." Mark's mind reeled. He glanced at the camera feed again. The man outside had stepped back slightly, positioning himself at an angle where the hallway light illuminated his face more clearly. He looked nothing like Raphael's profile picture. This man was older, maybe 45, with sharp features and pale skin. His QuickBite vest fit perfectly, as if it had been tailored for him. The thermal bag in his hand bore all the right logos and markings. But his eyes were wrong. They were scanning the hallway with mechanical precision, assessing exits, checking sightlines, moving with the practiced awareness of someone who'd done this before. Mark typed frantically, "Why would someone do this? What do they want?" The response took longer this time. When it finally came, Mark felt ice water flood his veins. "I don't know. But I've been listening to them talk. They keep saying they need to make the delivery. They keep checking their watches. They seem like they're on some kind of schedule. And Mark, they know your name, they know your apartment number, they know you live alone. They've been planning this. The knock came again, louder. Quick bite delivery, the man's voice called through the door. It sounded pleasant, normal, exactly how a driver would sound after climbing 5 flights of stairs in the rain. Sorry for the wait. Your burger's getting cold. Mark backed away from the door, his mind racing through scenarios. If this was some kind of robbery, why the elaborate setup? Why not just break in? Why impersonate a delivery driver when the building had security cameras everywhere? Unless, the thought hit him like a freight train, unless they needed him to open the door willingly, needed it to look legitimate on camera, needed plausible deniability. His phone buzzed with another message from Raphael. There's something else. I just figured out where I am. I can see a street sign through a broken window. I'm at the old Cascade Marine warehouse on Harbor Avenue. But Mark, I looked up the address. That building is scheduled for demolition. Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. They're bringing it down with explosives. Mark's knees nearly buckled. Have you called 911? My watch can only access the app. I can't make calls. Please, you need to call the police, for both of us. Mark's hands fumbled for his phone's dial pad, but before he could pull it up, the man outside spoke again. Sir, I can see your shadow under the door. I know you're there. I need you to sign for this delivery. Company policy for orders over $30. That was a lie. Mark had never signed for a quick bite delivery in his life. Everything was handled through the app. His thumb hovered over the emergency call button. Then his apartment plunged into darkness. The power had been cut. Not just in his unit. Through the peephole, Mark could see the hallway lights were still on. Someone had specifically killed the breakers to his apartment. The only illumination came from his phone screen and the faint glow of Seattle's skyline through the window. Building maintenance, the man outside called out, his voice still maddeningly calm. Looks like there's an electrical issue in your unit. I'm going to need you to open the door so I can check if your refrigerator is still running. Food safety protocol. Mark's breath came in short, sharp gasps. His phone screen cast eerie shadows across the room. Another message from Raphael. My heart rate monitor just showed a spike. I think they're coming back. They're wearing masks. I can hear footsteps. Mark, please. The message cut off. Mark stared at the screen, willing more words to appear. Seconds ticked by. 10, 20, 30, nothing. He pulled up the heart rate monitor. 141 beats per minute, 143, 147, rising. Sir? The man's voice had lost some of its artificial pleasantness. I'm going to need you to open this door now. Mark's finger finally hit the emergency call button. The phone began to dial 911, but before the first ring could complete, his apartment door shuddered violently. Someone was ramming it from the outside. The deadbolt held barely, but Mark could see the frame beginning to splinter. They'd given up on pretense. Whatever was in that thermal bag, whatever they had planned, they were coming in whether he cooperated or not. Mark ran to his bedroom, his mind operating on pure survival instinct now. The fire escape. He had to reach the fire escape. Behind him, another thunderous impact shook the apartment door. Wood cracked. His phone connected to 911. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's breaking into my apartment, Mark gasped, throwing open his bedroom window. Cold rain and wind blasted him in the face. 5th floor, 708 7th Avenue, apartment 512. There's also a man being held hostage at the Cascade Marine warehouse on Harbor Avenue. Crash. The apartment door gave way. Mark didn't look back. He climbed through the window onto the fire escape, his hands slipping on wet metal. The 911 operator was asking questions, but Mark couldn't focus on the words. He pocketed his phone and began descending the ladder, his dress shoes sliding dangerously on the rain-slicked rungs. Above him, he heard his apartment windows slide open. They were following him down. Mark's feet hit the 4th floor landing. He risked a glance upward and saw a silhouette climbing through his window with disturbing efficiency. No hesitation, no fear of heights. Professional. Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket. Somehow, impossibly, another message from Raphael had come through. They're taking me out of the warehouse. There's a van. Please tell me the police are coming. Please tell me someone's coming. And then, one final message that made Mark's blood turn to ice. Wait, I can hear sirens, but they're not coming toward me. They're heading toward downtown, toward you. Mark, I think this was never about me. I think I was just the bait. They wanted you to call the police. They wanted a response at your location. Mark's descent froze. His mind assembled the pieces with horrifying clarity. The elaborate setup, the messages designed to elicit a specific response, the perfectly timed power outage, the forced entry that would absolutely require police response. They hadn't wanted to kill him quietly. They'd wanted chaos, wanted cops, wanted witnesses. But why? His phone buzzed one last time. A new message. But this one wasn't from Raphael. It was from an unknown number. Check the thermal bag, Mark. We left it by your door. Open it before the police arrive. You have 4 minutes to decide if you want to be a victim or a suspect. Choose wisely. Mark clung to the fire escape railing, rain streaming down his face, his entire body trembling from a cocktail of adrenaline and terror. The metal ladder swayed slightly in the wind, groaning under his weight. Below him, the alley stretched 4 stories down to wet pavement that glistened under a single flickering streetlight. Above him, the silhouette had stopped climbing. The figure stood motionless on the 5th-floor landing, backlit by the pale glow from Mark's ransacked apartment. He wasn't pursuing anymore. He was just watching, waiting. Mark's phone buzzed again in his pocket. The same unknown number. 3 minutes, 40 seconds. The thermal bag is just inside your doorway. Still warm. Still waiting. Every second you waste out there in the rain is another second closer to a decision you can't take back. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Mark could see flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the wet buildings 2 blocks away, approaching fast. His mind raced through the implications. If he stayed on the fire escape, the police would arrive to find his apartment broken into, him fleeing down the side of the building, and a thermal bag left behind by an intruder. He'd be a victim. There'd be an investigation, questions, reports. But if there was something in that bag, something that could implicate him in whatever sick game this was, then fleeing made him look guilty. Running made him look like he had something to hide. 2 minutes, 55 seconds. You're a data analyst, Mark. Run the probabilities. What's in the bag that would make someone go through this much trouble? What could possibly be worth staging an elaborate kidnapping, breaking into your apartment, and forcing a police response? Mark's fingers tightened on the railing. The figure above him hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stood there like a statue, radiating an aura of infinite patience. Another message arrived. Think about Raphael. Real name, real person, real delivery driver. We chose him carefully. Same age bracket as you, similar build, lives alone. No family in Seattle. Do you see it yet, Mark? Do you see why he was perfect? Mark's stomach lurched. No, 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 no. 1 minute, 40 seconds. Raphael's van is parked 3 blocks from your building. His fingerprints are all over the interior. His phone, his real phone, the one we took from him, has text messages on it. Messages to you. Planning messages. Conspiracy messages. Messages that make it look like you two had been communicating for weeks. Mark's vision blurred with rain and panic. He pulled up the chat window with Raphael, scrolling frantically through their conversation. Every message was still there. The desperate pleas for help, the GPS coordinates, the heart rate monitor data. All of it could be fake. All of it could be manufactured. 45 seconds. Here's what the police will find if you don't go back inside. A delivery driver who was supposed to bring you food but instead was kidnapped. A man who claims he was attacked and held hostage. A man whose story perfectly corroborates evidence we've spent 3 weeks planting. Credit card transactions between you and Raphael that look like payments. Encrypted messages on a burner phone we left in your desk drawer. A motive. Mark's hands shook so violently he nearly dropped his phone. What motive? He typed desperately. The response was immediate. Check the thermal bag. You have 20 seconds to decide who you want to be when those officers walk through your door. The sirens were deafening now. Mark could hear car doors slamming on the street below, heavy footsteps, radio chatter. Seattle PD, we're entering the building. Mark looked up at the figure on the 5th-floor landing. The man raised one hand in a casual wave, then turned and disappeared back through the window into Mark's apartment. Mark's entire body screamed at him to climb down, to run, to get as far away from this nightmare as possible. But his mind, his analytical, probability-calculating mind, knew that running would seal his fate. Whatever was in that bag, whatever evidence had been manufactured, fleeing made him guilty, staying made him a victim, unless the bag contained proof. Unless whoever had orchestrated this had made a mistake. Mark began climbing back up. His hands found purchase on the slick rungs, hauling himself upward against every survival instinct. 4th floor, 5th floor. He reached his bedroom window and pulled himself through, landing in a crouch on his soaked carpet. The apartment was silent, empty. Mark crept toward his living room, water dripping from his clothes. The front door hung at an angle, the frame completely shattered. Just inside the threshold, exactly as promised, sat the red and yellow thermal delivery bag. It was zipped closed. Voices echoed in the stairwell outside. The police were coming up, maybe 30 seconds away. Mark knelt beside the bag, his fingers finding the zipper pull. He paused, every horror movie he'd ever seen flashing through his mind. Bombs, biological weapons, severed body parts, but also evidence, proof, something that would make sense of this insanity. He pulled the zipper. Inside the bag, nestled in layers of insulated fabric, was a cardboard food container from Burger Stop. Steam rose from the edges. His burger, his actual order, still hot, and beneath it, sealed in a clear plastic evidence bag, was a smartphone. Not Raphael's phone, Mark's own phone. The exact model, the exact color, with the exact same case, but with a spiderweb crack across the screen that Mark's phone didn't have. He picked it up with trembling hands, turning it over. On the back, someone had taped a handwritten note. Check the photo gallery, check the messages, check the location history. This is the phone the police will find in Raphael's van. This is the phone that shows you planned everything, unless you do exactly what we tell you to do next. Mark heard footsteps in the hallway. Seattle PD, sir, are you in here? His real phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. Put the evidence bag in your pocket. Tell the police exactly what happened, but leave out the part about the bag. Tell them someone broke in. Tell them you ran. Tell them you have no idea why anyone would target you. Can you do that, Mark? Can you play the confused victim? Two officers appeared in the doorway, hands on their weapons. Sir, step away from the door, hands where we can see them. Mark raised his hands slowly, the evidence bag hidden in his jacket pocket, pressed against his racing heart. His burger sat open on the floor, still steaming. Someone broke into my apartment, Mark said, his voice surprisingly steady. I got a weird message from my delivery driver. I think he was in trouble. I called 911, and then someone started breaking down my door. The officers exchanged glances. One of them spoke into his radio. Dispatch, we need another unit at the Cascade Marine Warehouse on Harbor Avenue. Possible hostage situation. The other officer approached Mark carefully. Sir, are you injured? Mark shook his head. We're going to need you to come down to the station and give a statement. We'll have someone process your apartment for evidence. The officer's eyes traveled to the thermal bag on the floor. Is that the delivery you ordered? Yes, Mark said, but I never got a chance to... His real phone buzzed. All three of them looked down at the device in Mark's hand. A new message had appeared on the screen, but this one wasn't from an unknown number. It was from Rafael Morales, and it contained a single photograph. Mark's blood turned to ice as the image loaded. It was a picture of him, taken from inside his apartment, taken through his bedroom window, taken 3 weeks ago. Mark was asleep in his bed, his face clearly visible in the frame, and in the bottom corner of the photo, barely visible but unmistakable, was a timestamp and GPS coordinate, the same coordinate where Raphael claimed to be held hostage. Sir? The officer's voice seemed to come from very far away. Sir, what's wrong? What's on your phone? Mark looked up at the two officers, his mind fracturing into 1,000 pieces as he realized the full scope of what had been done to him. They hadn't just framed him for a crime, they'd turned him into evidence. And somewhere in an abandoned warehouse scheduled for demolition in less than 7 hours, Rafael Morales was holding Mark's fate in his bound hands. I need to make a phone call, Mark whispered. The unknown number sent one final message. No, Mark, you really don't. Because the person you'd call, they already know you're guilty. Everyone's going to know. Unless you listen very carefully to what I tell you next. Check your email. You have an invitation. A meeting. Tomorrow at noon. Come alone, or Raphael dies, and you spend the next 20 years in prison for a murder that hasn't even happened yet. Tick-tock. Mark sat in the sterile interrogation room at the Seattle Police Department's West Precinct, his damp clothes clinging to his skin, his mind operating on a frequency somewhere between shock and strategic calculation. The digital clock on the wall read 12:47 a.m. He'd been here for just over an hour, repeating the same story to 3 different officers. Someone broke into my apartment. I received strange messages from my delivery driver. I called 911. I ran. Simple. Consistent. Partially true. The detective across from him, a woman in her early 50s named Patricia Vega, had kind eyes, but the posture of someone who'd heard every lie in the book. She'd been patient so far, but Mark could sense her growing skepticism with each repetition of his account. Let me make sure I understand, Detective Vega said, reviewing her notes. You ordered food through QuickBite at approximately 10:30 p.m. The driver, Rafael Morales, was allegedly kidnapped after picking up your order. This person, or persons, then used his credentials to gain access to your building, attempted to deliver your food, and when you refused to open the door, they broke in. Yes, Mark said. And during this time, Raphael was somehow able to contact you through his smartwatch to warn you, despite being held captive. Yes. But you never actually saw Raphael. You only saw someone wearing his vest. Correct. Detective Vega leaned back in her chair. Mr. Caldwell, we sent officers to the Cascade Marine warehouse. They found evidence of recent occupation, zip ties, some discarded food wrappers, tire tracks, but no Rafael Morales, no captors, no van. Mark's stomach tightened. We also can't locate Mr. Morales. His phone is off. His apartment appears empty. His vehicle, a 2019 Honda Civic, hasn't been seen since approximately 10 p.m. tonight. That's because they took him, Mark insisted. He told you through messages that we can't verify came from him, Vega interrupted gently. Messages that could have been sent by anyone with access to his QuickBite account. Mark's hands clenched beneath the table. The evidence bag in his pocket felt like it was burning through his jacket. The duplicate phone, the photograph, the manufactured proof of a conspiracy that didn't exist. They were waiting for him to produce it, waiting for him to panic and reveal the one piece of evidence that would destroy him. Mr. Caldwell, Vega continued, I'm going to be straight with you. This situation has some unusual elements that concern us. We pulled your financial records with a preliminary warrant. You've been making regular payments to Rafael Morales through Venmo for the past 3 weeks, $200 every Friday. Can you explain that? Mark's vision swam. I've never sent Rafael any money. I've never even met him. I only knew his name from tonight's delivery. Vega slid a printed document across the table. Mark's Venmo transaction history, highlighted in yellow, 6 payments, $200 each, all to Rafael Morales, all with the memo, for services rendered. I didn't send these, Mark said, his voice cracking. This isn't real. Someone's setting me up. We also found some concerning search history on your laptop. Searches for how to delete GPS data, untraceable communication methods, and Cascade Marine warehouse demolition schedule, all conducted over the past 2 weeks. Mark's world tilted sideways. He'd never searched for any of those things, but if someone had access to his apartment 3 weeks ago, access to take that photograph while he slept, they'd had access to everything. His laptop, his accounts, his entire digital life. I want a lawyer, Mark said quietly. Detective Vega nodded, unsurprised. That's your right, but before I step out, I want you to know something. She leaned forward, her expression softening. I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen elaborate schemes, Mr. Caldwell. I've seen people framed by enemies, by ex-partners, by business rivals, and I've seen guilty people who are very, very good at playing victim. She stood, gathering her files. The thing that's nagging at me is this. If someone really wanted to frame you for kidnapping Rafael Morales, why go through all this trouble? Why the delivery app charade? Why the break-in? Why make it so theatrical? Mark met her eyes. I don't know. I think you do, Vega said. I think you know exactly why. And I think in about 6 hours, when the demolition crew shows up at that warehouse, we're going to find something that's going to make everything click into place. She left the room, the door clicking shut behind her. Mark sat alone, his mind racing. He pulled out his phone, the real one, and checked his email with shaking hands. Just as the message had promised, there was a new email from an anonymous sender. Subject line, your invitation. He opened it. Mark, by now you understand the situation. You've been transformed from a nobody into a person of interest in a kidnapping investigation. Every search, every transaction, every piece of digital evidence points to you. And in 6 hours, when they excavate that warehouse before demolition, they're going to find Rafael's body buried in the foundation. A body that's been there for 2 weeks. A body that DNA evidence will confirm died approximately 3 weeks ago, right around the time someone took that photo of you sleeping. Here's what you don't know. Rafael Morales was a problem. He saw something he shouldn't have seen. He delivered food to the wrong apartment at the wrong time and witnessed a transaction that certain people would very much like to keep quiet. We eliminated him, and we needed someone to take the fall. We chose you because you're perfect, Mark. Isolated, predictable, no close friends or family to vouch for your character, a paper trail that's easy to manipulate, a life lived almost entirely online, which means a life we could rewrite. But here's the beautiful part. We don't actually want you in prison. We want you working for us tomorrow, today, technically. At noon, you're going to meet me at Pioneer Square, northwest corner. Come alone. Bring your phone. Don't tell the police about this email. Don't mention the duplicate phone in your pocket. And definitely don't try anything heroic. If you cooperate, we'll provide you with an airtight alibi. We'll produce evidence that exonerates you completely. We'll even find the real killers. You'll walk away from this nightmare. If you refuse, Rafael's body will be discovered right on schedule. Every piece of evidence will lead directly to you, and you'll spend the next 30 years in prison for a murder you didn't commit. The choice is yours. See you at noon, P.S. Delete this email. They're monitoring your device. Mark read the message 3 times, his hands trembling. He understood now. This wasn't about kidnapping. It wasn't about Raphael. This was recruitment. This was leverage. They'd manufactured a perfect trap, one that gave him only two options: become their asset or become their scapegoat. He deleted the email. Then he opened his phone's recording app, the one he'd activated the moment he'd climbed back through his bedroom window, the one that had been recording every conversation, every message, every moment since the police arrived. Mark Caldwell was a data analyst. He lived in spreadsheets and probability matrices, and he'd just realized something crucial. Whoever had orchestrated this had made their first mistake. They'd assumed he would panic, assumed he would react emotionally instead of analytically. But Mark had been documenting everything, every message, every timestamp, every impossible detail. And he'd noticed something the kidnappers hadn't considered. The heart rate data from Raphael's smartwatch had continued transmitting for exactly 43 minutes after the police arrived at the warehouse and found it empty, which meant either Raphael was still alive and hiding nearby, or the watch was still transmitting from his body. Either way, it was a thread, a crack in the facade. Mark stood and walked to the interrogation room door, knocking firmly. Detective Vega opened it a moment later. "Change your mind about that, lawyer?" "No," Mark said. "I want to show you something, but I need you to trust me for the next 12 hours. I need you to let me out of here, let me go to that meeting, and I need you to have units ready to move when I give you a signal." Vega's eyes narrowed. "That's not how this works." "You said this whole thing felt theatrical," Mark pressed. "You said it was too elaborate." "You're right. Because this isn't about kidnapping Raphael. This is about leverage, and the only way to break it is to play along until they reveal what they really want." He pulled out his phone and showed her the recording, showed her the messages, showed her the photograph of himself sleeping, a photograph that proved someone had been in his apartment weeks before tonight's incident. "They're not framing me for something I did," Mark said. "They're framing me for something they did, and they're going to use it to blackmail me into working for them. But if you let me go to that meeting, if you let me record what they say, you'll get the real criminals." Detective Vega studied him for a long moment. "This is insane. I know. You could be lying about all of this. I know. If I let you walk out of here and you run, I'll hunt you down myself. I know." Vega pulled out her phone and made a call. "Captain, it's Vega. I need to brief you on something unusual. And I need authorization for an undercover operation." She paused, listening. "Yes, sir, the Caldwell case. I know it sounds crazy, but I think we've been looking at this wrong." She hung up and looked at Mark. "You have 12 hours. Noon at Pioneer Square. We'll have plainclothes officers in position. You'll wear a wire, and if this is a setup, if you're playing me, I will personally make sure you never see daylight again." "Understood," Mark said. "One more thing," Vega added. "If Rafael Morales really is dead, if they really did bury him in that warehouse foundation weeks ago, what do you think they're planning to do with you once you're no longer useful?" Mark met her gaze steadily. "The same thing they did to him. That's why I'm not running. That's why I'm going to that meeting, because if I don't stop this now, I'm not just facing prison time. I'm facing a bullet in the back of the head and a shallow grave somewhere in Puget Sound." 11 hours later, Mark stood on the northwest corner of Pioneer Square, his hands in his pockets, the wire taped to his chest, feeling like it might burn straight through his skin. The midday sun had broken through Seattle's perpetual cloud cover, casting sharp shadows across the historic brick plaza. Tourists milled about. Street musicians played. Life continued its normal rhythm, completely unaware of the trap about to spring. A man in an expensive suit approached from the south side of the square. Early 50s, silver hair, confident stride. He sat down on the bench beside Mark without introduction. "Mr. Caldwell, glad you could make it. Who are you?" Mark asked. "Someone who solves problems for people who can't afford to have problems." The man smiled. "You did well last night. Stayed calm. Didn't reveal the duplicate phone. Played your part perfectly. Where's Raphael?" "Raphael Morales has been dead for 19 days. The man said casually. "Drug overdose. Tragic, really. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Delivered food to a penthouse where a very expensive transaction was taking place. He saw faces he shouldn't have seen, heard names he shouldn't have heard. So we eliminated him and staged his body at the warehouse. And framed me. Framed you. Recruited you. Semantics." The man shrugged. "Here's what happens next. You're going to work for us. Nothing dramatic, just small favors. Use your data analysis skills to help us move money through certain channels, clean up financial records, make patterns disappear. Do that, and we'll provide evidence that clears you. We'll produce the real killers. You'll be a hero." "And if I refuse?" The man's smile vanished. Then Raphael's body is discovered this afternoon, right on schedule. All evidence points to you. And you spend the rest of your life in prison wondering what would have happened if you'd just been smart enough to say yes. Mark pulled the duplicate phone from his pocket. This is what you're using to blackmail me. This is the evidence you planted. Yes. There's just one problem, Mark said. Raphael's smartwatch. It kept transmitting heart rate data for 43 minutes after the police searched that empty warehouse. Which means either he's still alive or the watch is still on his body. And if the watch is still transmitting, then his body isn't buried in the warehouse foundation, because that foundation was poured 11 months ago according to city records. The man's expression flickered. You made a mistake, Mark continued. You built this elaborate frame around a murder that hasn't actually happened yet. You needed me to believe Raphael was already dead, already buried, so I'd panic and cooperate. But the data doesn't support your timeline. Mark pulled out his real phone. I've been recording everything, every message, every threat, and I spent the last 11 hours with the police analyzing the digital forensics, the Venmo payments, clumsy forgeries with IP addresses that trace back to a server farm in Estonia. The search history on my laptop, time-stamped during hours when building security footage, shows I was still at my office. The man stood slowly, his hand moving toward his jacket. I wouldn't. Detective Vega's voice cut through the square. She emerged from behind a nearby food cart, weapon drawn. Seattle PD, hands where I can see them. 6 plainclothes officers materialized from the crowd surrounding the bench. The man in the suit raised his hands slowly, his expression shifting from confidence to cold calculation. You have no idea what you've done, Mr. Caldwell. The people I work for don't lose gracefully. Maybe not, Mark said, but they're going to have to learn. As the officers moved in to make the arrest, Mark's phone buzzed one final time, a message from an unknown number, but this time he recognized the pattern. Mark, it's Raphael. I'm alive. I've been hiding in my cousin's basement in Tacoma for 3 weeks. They killed someone and staged it to look like me, but I ran before they could finish the job. I've been too scared to come forward. But if you're reading this, it means the cops finally got the guys who tried to kill me. Thank you. Mark showed the message to Detective Vega. She read it, then looked at him with something approaching respect. How did you know? I didn't, Mark admitted. Not for certain. But the data told a story that didn't match their narrative. And in my experience, data doesn't lie. People do. As the officers led the man in the suit away in handcuffs, Mark sat back down on the bench, his entire body finally releasing 3 weeks of manufactured tension he'd been carrying without even knowing it. His phone buzzed with one more message, this time from his QuickBite app. Your order from last night is still available for pickup. Would you like to reorder? Mark laughed, a genuine, exhausted, slightly hysterical laugh that turned the heads of nearby tourists. No, he muttered to himself, canceling the order. I think I'll cook at home tonight. 3 months later, the man in the expensive suit, whose real name turned out to be Marcus Brennan, a fixer for a money laundering operation connected to 6 different criminal enterprises, was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Rafael Morales testified at the trial, describing how he'd witnessed a transaction in a downtown penthouse and barely escaped with his life. Mark Caldwell went back to his spreadsheets and his quiet life, but he never ordered delivery again, and every time his doorbell rang, he checked the peephole 3 times before answering. Some nightmares, he'd learned, didn't need ghosts or demons. Sometimes the most terrifying monsters were the ones who knew exactly how to weaponize your own life against you, and sometimes, just sometimes, the numbers told you how to fight back. Thank you for listening. If you value a good narrative, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell to be the first to know when the next story arrives. Until next time.